Hi, this is Dave Bundy. I'm editor of the Lincoln Journal-Star, and we are visiting today with Travis Filing, who is a Lancaster County Commission District 3 candidate. Travis, thanks a bunch for joining us. Before we get to talk all about you, we'll talk very briefly about the other two people who are on the camera. Robin, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Robin Eschliman. I'm a volunteer for the Journal-Star editorial board. I work for Eschliman Commercial Real Estate and the Grow Lincoln Show. And I'll tell you in advance, I'm probably going to have to go on mute and no video in a minute because I'm expecting kind of a disruption here.
Hopefully,
all right, and it's not something that would be fun.
I don't think it's going to be bad. No, it's going to be another real estate agent.
Oh, okay. Well, and just for the record, at the beginning you were a volunteer, but I think we just haven't let you lead. You may still be on the board under duress at this
I may be a prisoner.
You are. Kent?
I'm Kent Walgamot. I write about arts and entertainment for the Journal-Star, and I've been on the editorial board for 12 years.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, Travis, first of all, I think I told you 6 questions. The last question's kind of open-ended. It'll give you a chance to have a big finish. And the first question is kind of an introductory one for you. Why do you want to serve on the county commission? Why do you want to be in politics at all in this day and age? And what experiences and attributes do you have that qualify you for it?
Yeah, well, the biggest reason I decided to run, I've had a lot of people asking me to run. So I have been on the town board in Panama for 12 years now. I've served as chairman of the board, which is essentially mayor. We're not big enough to have a mayor, so we just have a chairman, but I've served for 2 years as a chairman. And in that time, we've accomplished so much in our town. And I've had a lot of people ask me to, run for county commission because they're seeing a lot of faults and failures, and a lot of people in rural Nebraska feel like they're being neglected. And so they want to see what I've done in Panama happen on a much larger scale.
All right, and tell me a little bit about what's happened in Panama.
Sure.
That you want to replicate.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things for our town, we only get funding one way, and that's property taxes. And so, where the county commissioners or the county, they get money from, several different areas. We only get from property taxes. And in the last 5 years, we have actually reduced property taxes, the portion that we control, by 27%. And so we have worked together and accomplished a lot. We've fixed a lot of infrastructure. We have built a community center. We are working on improving water. We're changing, a lot of the old pipes, a lot of the old infrastructure, and we're just trying to build the town up. And we're being successful while taking less money from people who live here.
All right. There have been some times in recently, public health issues, not directly related to stuff the county commission deals with, but education issues. There's some tension sometimes between state control and local control. What are your thoughts on that tension? What are your thoughts on the extent of local control? Where should the state be sticking its nose and where shouldn't it?
Yeah, well, and I think for rural parts of Nebraska, I mean, ultimately, I think the state has the most authority, and when it comes to COVID and mask mandates and so forth, I think the state can handle that on a statewide level. When it comes to Lancaster County, we have merged our health departments together. And so when the mayor of Lincoln decides that there's a mask mandate, then it gets handed off to the whole county. So now people who are in rural Nebraska, we get handed down mandates by someone we didn't get to vote for. And that's not right. So in instances like that, it has to be the state. Or let each individual community do their own mandates. So when you allow one person to control the entire county, who the entire county doesn't get to vote for, that's not right. That's not fair.
All right. Travis, I can tell just 6 minutes into this interview, you're going to be a very efficient answerer of questions. So, there's no sin in being done early, but, if you want to elaborate on anything, your time is.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm a pretty to the point guy. My wife and I, we run multiple businesses, and running the town of Panama, and of course running for commissioner, we have to get things done quickly and efficiently. So I appreciate that, and I'll try and elaborate a little bit more, but don't be afraid to ask me as many questions as you want.
Whatever you like. So the next question is, obviously, infrastructure is a huge issue for the county.
Yeah.
Roads, bridges. How do you meet both the needs to fix and maintain and keep up with the growth that seems to be happening?
Yeah, I mean, the growth is one thing that, that's going to happen. And as it's starting to move outside of Lincoln and into smaller communities, obviously property values are going up, but our taxes are going up, and our county commissioners are pushing a lot of money into special interests, and they're not taking care of what needs to be done as far as infrastructure goes. One of my opponents my opponent that's on the board says that infrastructure is her top priority, and that in the last 7 years, there were 24 closed bridges in Lancaster County, and now it's been whittled down to 8. And not to be able to open 24 bridges in 7 years shows you an absolute failure in government for the county, because we should be able to get these bridges funded, fixed, and moving forward. And we're not. And I was just filming down at under a bridge there's one on Panama Road that we went under. There's one on Roca Road that we went under. And it's alarming. In fact, let me step off camera for 1 second here. This is steel that just came off of a bridge on Roca Road, just falling off of a bridge on Roca Road. And to me, this shows this is not a priority to our county commissioners. They say that they've increased funding 40% over the last 8 years into infrastructure. Well, it's kind of true. It's all come in the last year. And so we're not giving enough money to roads and bridges. And unfortunately, my biggest fear is we're going to have a catastrophic failure, and it may cost somebody their lives. And if we don't get this figured out quick, we're going to find that we're going to meet that demise. And that's terrifying, especially as someone who lives out in the country, and I drive over these bridges every day.
All right. Well, I think you're the first person to use props in an interview here, so that's saying something. Okay, the next question for you, Travis. There's a certain amount of, tension as well, balancing the needs and desires of property owners and the commercial interests, whether it's a Costco chicken farm or whether it's solar or wind. How do you navigate those issues?
Well, wind and solar in particular, it's easy to navigate. It's a no. Wind and solar doesn't work. It crushes property values, and it gets put out here in the rural parts because you can't put it in Lincoln. It gets put out here in the rural parts, and property owners suffer. It's dangerous, especially wind. It makes people sick. It makes animals sick. And again, depending on how close you are to these wind turbines, your property value will drop anywhere from 20 to 55%. And the thing that really bothers me is every single county official that's elected or running for office in both parties lives inside the city limits, with the exception of Roma, who's about a half a mile outside the city limits, and then me, who's actually down here where they're trying to put these wind turbines. And that is uber frustrating to people out here because they're voting, they're giving it a thumbs up, they're taking money from these companies who want to put it in. The commissioners are, they're getting contributions to their campaign funds, and then they're just going, drop it on the people in Panama and in Hickman and Hallam and whatnot. And then same with the solar farms. Stick it out by Emerald. I can't see it from my house. Stick it out there on the edge on your way to Eagle. And that's totally unfair. So wind, solar is an absolute hard no for me.
What about other kinds of commercial development? I mean,
a lot of that it's a case by case. It's not all cut and dry. I remember when the chicken farm came up, and that was a handful of years ago. I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it, probably should have. So to me, that's all a case by case basis. Yeah, the community has to grow, the county has to grow, but at the same time, property rights are pinnacle. They're the absolute top for me. So we have to start protecting our landowners, especially with as much money as we're charging them in taxes. We need to help them out and protect their rights.
we've talked about some of the issues that the editorial board is interested in. There may be some overlap, but if elected, what are your top priorities? What are the most important things that you would be pursuing as a commissioner?
Well, the biggest thing is fiscal responsibility. And we are spending so much money in so many unneeded places that, our taxes are through the roof, and we're not doing a good job supporting the sheriff's department. We're not doing a good job on infrastructure. And mostly these rural residents like me, we're suffering from it. And I'll give you a great example. So back in September, I think it was August or September of last year, my wife and I were driving back from a business meeting in Iowa, and we had our daughter, who's 19, she calls us and says, the side door to the house is open. The dog is inside going nuts, and our dog doesn't bark. And she says, well, what do I do? Now, if you live in Lincoln, you call 911. But we don't have that luxury out here. So I told her, go over to the neighbor's house, which we're lucky enough that our neighbor is ex-military, ex-law enforcement. And I said, go talk to Chris, tell him what's going on. So she goes over, gets Chris, his wife calls 911, sheriff's department is on the way, and he goes over and clears the house. 28 minutes later, the sheriff showed up. So, and this isn't a knock on the sheriff's department, because he's doing an unbelievable job with a skeleton crew. But the point is, most counties that are our size have between 250 and 350 deputies. We have 86. And when you start dividing that out, that means there's about 1.5 deputies on duty at any given point in time out here in the rural part of the county. And 28 minutes, the deputy happened to be in Denton at the time. And again, not his fault. I couldn't make it to Denton in 28 minutes, but he did. And that's ridiculous. We need to start giving more money to the sheriff's department, because this is a safety issue. And when we have bridges that are getting closed and it takes 2 or 3 years to get them open. I have a friend that lives on Roca Road, and the bridge by his house was out. He had to go 3.5 miles out of his way just to cover 1/4 mile in ground. Now, what happens if you need an ambulance? What happens if you need the police? I mean, you're talking adding for him 3.5 or 7 miles to a journey for an ambulance to get there, pick you up and take you in, or for 3.5 miles for the sheriff to get there. That's unacceptable. That means our county commissioners don't care about rural Nebraska.
All right. Kent, you usually jump in here with a question.
Yeah, actually usually jump in with two. The first one is, do you think the county should have a role in the process of finding a second water source for Lincoln and bringing the water in as Lincoln grows and the county grows in the rural area? It's clear that there needs to be a second water supply sometime in the next, I think they say 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think you work with rural water. That's what their job is. Fund them, help them. They're going to do their job very efficiently. So yeah, I think they should have an active role in working with the rural water district to find that source.
And secondly, the health department is city, county, the planning there. Do you see other places where that could be done in the sense of government efficiency kind of thing? If you can eliminate an entire department in one or the other, that should work to bring taxes down and et cetera.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good idea, but there also has to be some middle ground. So I think working together is good, but there are some rules that Lincoln needs to decide for Lincoln. And then there's some rules that the county needs to decide, well, these are Lincoln rules, these are county rules, or small town. So I think there's a ton of efficiencies there, but it needs to be fair because, again, you're governing people who don't get to vote in specific elections. Did I answer the question?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Robin, looks like you're back now. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I was able to hear. And I wanted to press you just a little bit more on the whole chicken farm and solar farm thing, because they do seem to be big issues that the county commissioners have been dealing with, maybe even lawsuits. To what extent is the problem, as we might call it, the fact that county property owners want to sell? And should their rights to want to sell be refused?
Well, some of them do. Yeah, they're definitely signing up a handful of people who want these wind turbines. But then what about the people who don't want to sell, who don't want to live next to it? And you'll see a lot of these property owners that are selling live remotely. So a lot of them are out of state. It's easy revenue source for them. Again, they own the land. It is their land to do with what they want. But when it starts impeding on other landowners' rights, then you have a massive problem. So yeah, I like I said, I think property owners should have a lot to say about what they can do on their property. But then when it impedes on other people's rights, infringes on other people's rights, that's where the government needs to get involved and say, this isn't right. This isn't fair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Travis, I think we are down to the final question, which is, what question do you wish we would have asked that we didn't ask you? This is your closing monologue, if you will.
Well, the biggest thing for people who are voting in this primary is they're in a really cool spot. One of the three of us is going to be the next county commissioner. Nobody has ever run, the Democrats have never run anybody against Deb in 20 years. The really good part is all three of us have either held or hold office. Deb has been in office for 20 years. That means she has a voting record and it's public. I've been in office for 12 years. That means I have a voting record and it's public. Matt, he was on the Lincoln Public School Board for 4 years. that means he has a voting record and is public. So when it comes to vetting your politicians or your candidates, it's a pretty easy job. It's just a couple of Google clicks away to find out who says they're for cutting taxes and who's actually cutting taxes, who says they're going to stand up to the group, especially in a voice of opposition, and who doesn't. So all these voting records are public. All you have to do is get online and check them out, and you can tell the difference between the three candidates really, really quick.
All right. Well, anything else, Travis?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for fielding our questions, and thank you for having the guts to run for office and to have been a public servant this far too. So we wish you the best. And with that, we will conclude our interview.
Awesome. I appreciate the time, guys.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.